Hope we're all doing well today. Today, I'm going to give you guys another book review. And today's book that I'll be reviewing is The Dragon Lords, Fool's Gold by John Holland. Now, the plot of this story is it follows a group of people who live in a land known as Conador, and it's governed by dragons. So, in this land, they're corrupt, they tax people a whole bunch of money, and they hoard all that treasure away for themselves, don't share it with anybody, and it causes everyone to live in depression, and they're now all living in poverty. No one can basically get anything because these dragons are just taking everything from them, not even giving them anything at all. Will, one of the characters in here, he has a farm that's obviously, it gets burned down, and how it gets burned down is from soldiers who work for these dragons. They refuse to pay the taxes, so the soldiers basically destroy his farm, and now Will is left alone. Then he meets some few other characters, Letty, and then her companion, Blur, who's a lizard-like man, and he's really huge. He's a big guy. He likes to basically wield his axe and smash things, basically. They meet another person called Quirk, who is a scholar learning to study these dragons in the land and find out more why they're so corrupt. Why are they taxing everybody? And then finally, we have Firkin, who is basically the comedic act and the drunk of this story. He was also Will's father's right-hand farmhand in this story. And now that we know these characters, what's next? Well, this is where Will's ideas come into play. Now that they've all come together, Will comes up with a plan to overthrow these dragons. This is where things start to get interesting in this story. Is who would have thought that it would have been a great idea to overthrow these dragons, who are obviously powerful, huge beasts. This is what makes the turning point of this story such epic tale to tell to everyone. So the other characters, they obviously think this is crazy, like I said, governed by dragons. Who's really that stupid to try to overpower these things? But he convinces them that, hey, we play our cards right, we can get through this. Not only can we overthrow these dragons, but we can even become rich in the process, because we then take all the gold that they've hoarded away and claim it as our own. Sounds like a great plan, but there's one issue. The drunken bastard in here, Firkin, he starts going around and telling everyone that there's kind of like a savior, chosen one in this story, and they believe that Will is that person. This causes a lot of conflict within the story, because now when he tries to explain that he is not the person, riots begin. The crowds start becoming violent, and now they're starting to create enemies with even people of the land and not just the dragons. That's another issue within this story that brings forth more action, and I was always willing to want to see more of it, which I did get much more of it throughout the story. So after reading it, all comes to an end. I would award this book a solid 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was really good, even though it's not a book that I'm sure many of you people have heard of, or even the author himself, John Holland, and he's not well known either. But why this book deserves it is, one, it's pretty fast paced. Love fast-paced books. I don't like it when they're just dragged out. They add more subplots and all this extra garbage that doesn't need to be in there. It's almost like they just add more in there to expand the story to the length it needs, so that way the publisher that they were trying to get published under would accept it. I highly dislike that when authors will do that. Another thing that I liked was the characters within here. They were funny, they were enjoyable. There's some of them that are badass. We have Quirk, who's the scholar, obviously the brains of the group. Firkin, he's obviously the drunk, and he's got the comedy in there. Will brings a little bit of it, but he's more of the leader who thinks of the plans. Letty, she's a badass right there. And Blur, the lizard man, he's also a pretty badass that just likes to swing his axe at anything and kill whatever he can, basically. So, characters, all well developed, and they were enjoyable. That's what every author should be shooting for when they write stories. Make your characters as believable and entertaining as you can, and readers will be able to have better connections with them, and almost to the point like they're real. That's what good writers should do, and John Hollins, you delivered that. And then the final thing was, obviously, the plot. Why it was so fun and entertaining is, never read a story where the land is actually governed by dragons. Usually other fantasy stories that I've read and that you've all read, they're usually, who are they governed by? People, wizards, humanoid-like creatures, never like beast creatures like dragons. And me, I love dragons. Like, to me, fantasy, in order to write good fantasy, you gotta have at least some dragons in there. If you don't have them in there, what the hell are you writing fantasy for? They're just a prime part of the universe, and he puts them in there. He uses them to great extent, and they too also are character developed, driven, to where I enjoyed them. I didn't hate them at all. I like these dragons, and at times I was kind of rooting for them because I wanted to kind of see them win as well, which that is another thing that he did pretty well, is he made the antagonists of this story likable. You love them. And whenever authors do that, whenever they make an antagonist likable, that lets you know you got a pretty good story right here. And you're going to have people not just rooting for the protagonist, they're going to be rooting for those antagonists as well. Great job right there. So that's basically all I have to say about this story. Once again, if you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend you get it. It's well worth your time. It's the first book in the Dragon Lord series. It's a trilogy so far. I'm not sure if there'll ever be any more. I would like to, but also I kind of don't, because I'm worried that it might destroy this world that he created. And you know, when authors try to expand even further and further, they not always keep to the level of like the first book or the first few books. They sort of always trying to dive down as the series progresses, because they run out of ideas to fill in the gaps that they create later on in the story. This one, there weren't like any gaps. It almost, believe it or not, could work as a standalone book. And it was good that he did that, because you never know, is this book going to be good or not good? And you want to write a book to where if you want to continue it, go ahead, leave the ending open just enough, but also write it to where if it doesn't do as good as you were hoping, or you weren't as connected to the story after it was published, you can then leave it and move on to a new story. That was also really great that John Hollins did that with this story. But that's all I basically have to say. check this book out once again. If you don't, you're missing out. Like, it's fun and entertaining. If you like action and fantasy, you're going to enjoy this book. So that's all, and hope everyone has a great day. And in the next video, I'll be reviewing the sequel to this, Dragon Lord's False Idols, where we're going to find out more about the characters, and there's even going to be some good twists that happen along the way, but I'll try to avoid those as much as possible. So take care, everyone. Have a great day, and keep reading.